WBNE.
Howdy, Tolks. Before we get started with this episode, I have the very exciting news that finally, here at the end of all things, but not really, you can now get merch for That's What I'm Tolkien About. Go to tpublic.com/user/tolkienaboutpod. There are stickers, there are t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, crew necks, long sleeve shirts, everything to keep you cozy for when we start The Hobbit in 2 weeks. So excited for that. So once again, you can go to tpublic.com/user/tolkienaboutpod or follow the link in the episode description. Okay, on with the show. Hello and welcome to episode 85, all about Return of the King, Extended Edition, Part 1, being the 85th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I'm joined by my friend, Bethany Pyle.
Hello, everyone!
Thank you, Bethany, for joining me here.
In my house.
At the end of all things. I've said that, I think, 3 times every episode for the last 3 episodes.
But it's actually here now, right? Is this the last Lord of the Rings? Well, you're going to do a special question and answer one, right?
Yes, listeners, today we are here to discuss the extended edition of Lord of the Rings. What movie is this?
Return of the King.
Return of the King.
Yes.
We're here to discuss the extended edition scenes and content of Return of the King. Yeah, and this episode I'm hoping, knock on wood, that I will split into 2 episodes. I just have a feeling we will talk long enough that it will cover 2. Oh, you think that's a lot of notes?
See,
oh, honey.
Yours are probably more detailed than mine. I have a lot of
oh, honey.
Know. Oh, wow.
Oh, honey.
Are you getting ASMR of you turning all these pages? That's a lot of pages.
Ready? It's not even showing up on the audio. But yeah, this will be the last episode for the Lord of the Rings movies.
That's crazy.
And then on either this Saturday or next Saturday or any Saturday or any day really, whenever, depending on when you're listening to this, because time is a non-existing construct at this point in our society.
Yes.
I will have a bonus Q&A episode. By the time you're listening to this, it's too late to submit questions because I've already recorded it. Too late. Aw, so sad. But I'll have a bonus episode, and then I will be starting The Hobbit.
Woo!
Which is the book.
Okay,
so this will lead me into so when I arrived at Bethany's house, I said, I have a story, but we need to wait until we're recording for me to tell it. So I now have a personal vendetta against publishing companies that publish The Hobbit because
I think I know what you're gonna say.
Want a copy of The Hobbit that I think any sane person or literature person, whatever, literary inclined book person would want, is I want my copy of The Hobbit to match my copy of Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And the copies of Lord of the Rings that I have are the black covers that have a color ring on it.
Right.
And then it's kind of a more minimal look.
Okay.
And they have a copy of The Hobbit that's black, and then it has a red circle on it with some mountains.
Yes, cool.
The problem is that they came out with a 75th anniversary edition that says now a major motion picture on the front. And it's not like it's a sticker that you can peel off.
Right, it's there.
Engraved on the cover. And this infuriates me to no end because I don't I hate capitalism with every fiber of my being.
Girl, yes.
I refuse to pay for Spotify Premium because...
Okay, but hold on.
No, that's what I mean, is that, I'm gonna have to get an Amazon Prime subscription when the Lord of the Rings series comes out.
You can just come over to my place.
Okay, cool, great.
Which I don't pay for either, sorry, Jeff Bezos. My dad has Amazon Prime.
Okay, cool, great. I'm gonna steal Bethany's dad's Amazon Prime login. Awesome. I hate capitalism. There are a lot of hills related to capitalism that I will die on, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
That I refuse to buy because I feel like when books have now a major motion picture or now a Netflix series, it feels like they're trying to trick me into reading the book, and I'm no, I just want to enjoy this book.
Or especially, as with The Hobbit, when the movie is garbage.
I was going to say,
don't associate these two.
I'm wearing a jean jacket and I'm taking it off because I'm getting all worked up. That's the other thing is that I know that they beat The Hobbit like a dead horse.
Oh, absolutely.
To churn out 3 movies when it didn't need to be 3 movies.
The book is like that thick.
Yeah.
It's so small.
So, like, I don't want to be reminded that The Hobbit was exploited for capitalism every time I look at it. I also understand this has absolutely nothing to do with Return of the King Extended
It's okay.
Edition.
This is important.
This is important because, like, I feel like I'm coming into this recording with a very chaotic energy, and I need to explain it. I need to explain why. I've been searching high and low, trying to find this specific version of The Hobbit that matches my versions of Lord of the Rings, but that doesn't say, now I made your motion picture.
Yes.
It appears this does not exist anymore. So I checked the Barnes & Noble website, and it says when you go online, the version of The Hobbit that they have showing online does not have Now I Made Your Motion Picture.
Okay.
But when you go in store, they only have Now I Made Your Motion Picture.
Which this is an odd problem, too, because I feel like Lord of the Rings is better known for being a major motion picture, but is that, like, far enough in the past that we're not putting that on all the Lord of the Rings copies?
I think they must have
everyone
messed
already
up.
knows.
They messed up the Hobbit movies so bad that they need to be like, remember, these are movies?
Please watch the movies.
Please watch these movies. It's like the reverse situation where, like, instead of trying to sell you on a book because it was made into a movie, they're trying to sell you on the movies because it was made from this very
actually
famous
good,
book.
yeah. Which also, is your story completed? Because I would really love to show you, and then I will post a picture on Facebook after this comes out, what my copy of The Hobbit looks like.
Is it all, like, decrepit?
Oh, it's wrecked. Let me go grab it real quick.
That's so beautiful. All right, go grab it. I'm going to drink water.
Yeah. I want some elevator music.
Sometimes I forget that water is good for you.
When you take that first sip.
You know, and you're like, oh my God,
thank you. So this is my copy of The Hobbit. It is yellowish brown. It's got, like, chunks out of the cover.
It's that beautiful aged book cover.
And it is bound with blue duct tape, which I wrote The
Hobbit on it.
On the side.
That's amazing. See, honestly, I wish I had just gone for buying random copies of Lord of the Rings, because now I feel like I'm obligated to match the set.
Right.
But if I had just done, you know, like, this is a, you know, mass market paperback kind of a style, I wish I had just done that, because I would have been very happy to have those on my shelves. But no, I had to go for the aesthetic.
I mean, I get both sides, and I think I do really appreciate this. I would like a copy of The Hobbit that looks pretty.
Yeah, so I'm trying to complete this aesthetic look.
Yes.
And I'm looking on all different kinds of book websites, and they're all saying, now I made your motion picture.
I'm so sorry.
I find on Walmart, they have a version, the version that I want, and it does not say now I made your motion picture on it. And it was on sale for like $7. And so I was like, okay, perfect. I'll buy it. Also, side note, listeners, Walmart, if you order from Walmart online, it ships insanely fast. Every time I bought something from Walmart, it's come faster than anything I've bought from Amazon.
Yeah. Amazon's been struggling this season, too.
So order from Walmart. Capitalism, but...
Just gonna slide that in here.
But order from Walmart.
Yeah, because Walmart's not a capitalist machine.
I know. That's what's so hard. That's what's so hard is that, like, there's no way to abstain from living as a consumer in a capitalist society.
So we're not talking about Lord of the Rings on your podcast anymore. We're overthrowing the oligarchy.
Yes. So I order this copy of The Hobbit. On the website, it does not say now I made your motion picture on the cover.
Good.
And literally right before I was coming here to record this, I got an email saying it had arrived, which was, like I said, Walmart ships so fast. It wasn't supposed to come until Monday.
Nice.
And it came today. Cool. And I ordered it like 2 days ago.
On a weekend, too.
So I was super hyped. I was like, yes, all right, this is perfect. I go and I open it up.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It says, now I made your motion picture on the front! And I feel like I've been lied to.
I'm so sorry.
Because
that's so frustrating.
I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
This is what it looked like online.
Where did they put that? Where did they put now major motion picture? There's no space on that cover.
It's in between the red circle and the Hobbit.
The moon?
Is that what? How am I supposed to know that's a moon? It could be a sun. Legolas says a red sun rises.
Blood has been spilled this night.
It's just a circle. Whatever.
I don't get to talk to people in real life very much.
I'm furious because I think I'm just going to have to. Actually, no. My last ditch effort, because I'm running out of time now.
Right, you need a copy.
I don't have time to order from like a random eBay seller and pay, $50.
Have you gone to like Second and Charles?
So, side note, Second and Charles has a display of Lord of the Rings, like a table in the center, and it's labeled. Every time that's what I'm talking about.
And literally every time I go to that store and see it, I'm like, shade.
Yeah,
stole Mary Clay's podcast title.
Yeah, listeners, if you are in a city,
but don't hate Second and Charles. It's the best bookstore.
It is a really cool bookstore. Yeah. If you're in an area of the United States where there are Second and Charles. The one in Richmond has a Lord of the Rings /Tolkien/fantasy display, and there's a sign on it that says, "Now that's what I'm Tolkien about." And every time I scream, every time I go in there. No, they also only have
I'm pretty sure I've seen they have box sets, but then you'd have to buy.
Yeah, I can buy a whole new box set, but I don't want to do that because my editions of Lord of the Rings that I have all of my notes and highlights from when I was reading it for the first time, and that's very special.
Yeah.
So. No, I'm not buying a whole new box.
I'm so
Do you
sorry.
see what I mean?
I do. That's frustrating.
This is so infuriating. So my last ditch effort is I'm going to start calling local bookstores here, and I'm going to be like, look, I'm going to sound insane, but I need you to tell me.
Chop Suey or something.
Can you
They've
go
got to.
and check your stash of Tolkien?
Yeah.
See if do you have The Hobbit? Okay, great. Is it the black cover version with the red
very specific
the red
copy
sun
of The
and or moon? Okay, great. Does it say Now I Made Your Motion Picture? And
then you hang up the phone angrily if they say yes.
And then I'll just be like, no! And then I'll be like, thank you so much for this time. Support local bookstores. Okay, bye. And then I'll order one from
in the
Amazon.
background while you hang up.
So that's the chaotic energy I'm coming in to this episode.
That was a nice 30-minute intro.
Woo! That was only 13 minutes.
Okay.
It'll be 10 minutes when I edit it down.
Exactly.
Woo! Also, what's really satisfying is that as I have now finished the films, I also finished this notebook.
Oh, I love that.
I was really worried actually that I was going to run out of space.
Right.
I have two pages left over. Oh, that's
the best.
And I
love a full notebook.
I finished disc 1, which has the most extended and added content.
Okay.
And I was really worried that I was going to run out. I was like, I'm not. So I started writing way smaller.
Oh no.
If you are a patron of the 11Zs tier, you get to see my notes that I take, and you will see what I mean when I say my writing started getting a lot smaller, and I was trying to I was a lot more generous with my notes earlier on, and then I was like, oh no, I'm running out of space. I need to I need to write down important thoughts only, rather than just being Faramir.
That's what all of my notes are, I feel like. It's LOL, Gimli, LOL, sad Faramir eyes. This will hopefully jog my memory enough to actually talk about these things with Mary Clay.
Yeah, so Return of the King Extended Edition. For listeners who haven't listened to the previous Extended Edition episodes, what I do is I put Extended Edition up on my TV, and then I have Theatrical Edition on my computer screen, and I sync them up for scenes that are extended, and then when they get out of sync is when I know, oh, okay, this is something that was cut from the theatrical, or from extended to go to Theatrical Edition.
Which is so smart. It's so insane.
It is insane. Am I insane now? I don't know. You decide.
Maybe a little bit.
Am I insane? You decide. Rewinds 2 minutes to where I'm screaming about trying to find a very specific edition of The Hobbit. Woo! Okay.
Passionate. That's the word.
So, our first scene extended is the finding of the ring.
Starting right off the bat.
Yes.
With Schmeagol.
Yeah, the only extended edition part of this scene is that you get 10 more seconds of Smeagol choking Deagle.
Okay.
And that's it.
That is, yes. I was wondering about that.
It's like that for a lot of the extended scenes.
Right. Well, when I got to especially disc 2, which I won't talk about too much right now, but a lot of the battle scenes when I was watching it, I was like...
It's just more orcs getting killed.
Yeah, because I told Mary Clay before, we're both going off the same booklet from the extended edition, and so it marks what's a new scene or what's extended, but then it won't tell you what's extended. So it was a lot of me having to guess. And I would get to the Battle of Pelennor Fields. They're just giving me a little bit more violence, aren't they?
Yeah, just a little bit more violence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. Also, unrelated to the extended, but I noticed it for the first time. since I just watched the end of Return of the King, that in the opening, Smeagol or Gollum, whatever, as he's becoming Gollum, says, we forgot the taste of bread and the sound of trees and the softness of the wind. And this is, I'm going to say the word parallel 5 million times in this episode, just a warning. Because that's what I realized, is that the extended edition for Return of the King, most of the stuff that was cut was just so that they could set up, like, cool parallels between, like, one character or one story and another or something. Anyway, this parallels when Frodo is on Mount Doom and he says, I can't recall the taste of food, nor the touch of grass, nor the, whatever.
Do you know how many billions of times I've seen this movie and I've never made that connection?
Well, I mean,
and now I'm thinking of other things that I wrote down was like, oh, this is like exactly like what happens later on here.
That's what's so good about the movies.
Yeah.
Is that like
there's them
you can watch them a million times and still like pick up on something new every time. So
definitely.
So the first extended scene, all it is you get more choking content. Cool. That sounded dirty. Anyway, I mean, if that's your thing, fine. So our next extended scene is the road to Isengard. It's just a little bit more banter of Merry and Pippin as they're absolutely high out of their minds, which I don't mind at all.
Oh, I love it. Like, all of the Merry and Pippin extended scenes are just fun. They're just there to, like, lighten it up a little bit up until, like, the very end when they get sad, but...
What?
Sad?
No. I know you said you're behind on the podcast, which is fine.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You're not invited back on this podcast
I'm sorry.
anymore. No, I don't know if you've listened to any of the Return of the King episodes yet, but I said that this scene of Merry and Pippin smoking legitimately might be my favorite scene in the whole franchise.
I love it so much. And it's like an extended scene in Two Towers, isn't it? Where they're like wading through the water.
Yes,
and Pippin's like, I'm so hungry. And then they see like apples, and then all of a sudden like a whole roasted chicken floats by in this nasty water. And they're like, oh my gosh. And that's the greatest.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. So I just, and then the way that everyone reacts when Gimli's like, are you kidding me?
Right. Because they've been
we thought you were dead.
Running nonstop for like weeks, not sleeping, not eating, just so worried about their children. And they find them high as a kite.
Hey bros, want to smoke?
Yeah.
Want a toke? And the way that they all, because Gandalf is like, ugh, hobbits.
I know.
And then Aragorn like laughs a little bit. Yeah. And like you can see Legolas in the background laughs a bit too.
Yeah.
And Gimli's like, you said there's pork?
Yeah, Gimli's like, where's my cut?
Yeah, so all this scene, this extended scene really is just more of Merry and Pippin bantering about like, this makes me feel like I'm back at the Green Dragon. And Mary's like, you've never worked a day in your life, Pippin. And they're just laughing, and I'm here for it.
Which I love. I think I've said this before. I'm sure other people have said this before. I love the whole, like, progression of Merry and Pippin as characters, which really, like, comes to a head in Return of the King with, like, even at the beginning of this movie, you're still getting them, like, goofing around, just, like, smoking and snacking together and being silly. And then to see that come all the way full circle of them literally saving Faramir and Éowyn's life.
Yeah, Merry and Pippin. Love them. A+.
The next one, The Voice of Saruman, is entirely new, and it drives me crazy. When we watched this together, I was livid. It was like, what do you mean that's all cut? How do you cut this whole scene? It's important.
My general, like, quote-unquote thesis with the extended editions is basically, like, they're fun to experience and watch. I don't think they're necessarily better movies than the theatrical edition.
Okay.
And when people are like, it's either extended edition or nothing at all, I'm like, get out. I don't have 4 hours of my life.
I mean, that's generally where I fall.
I know, that's where you
respect your opinion.
See, at least you respect my opinion. I just spit. It's fine. So, like, generally, I'm like, I understand why this was cut. This makes sense why it was cut. Or the movie works way better without this scene because it flows better or whatever.
Which is not necessary.
Saruman's plotline is one of the bigger things in Return of the King. And again, this goes back to my whole rant and, anger about the way that Peter Jackson structured the Two Towers movies, that he extended so much of the plot lines in Two Towers that there left very little extra room in Return of the King. So they had to cut a bunch of stuff just to get it down to a somewhat reasonable length of a movie, which is still 3 hours and 15 minutes.
So much, yeah.
Before credits.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, so, and Saruman's plotline is the one thing that when I'm watching Return of the King, I'm like, this makes zero sense that or theatrical edition.
Yeah.
This makes zero sense that you had this big villain in the first 2 movies, and then all of a sudden they're just like, yeah, he's locked up in his tower. Okay.
Yeah, and then they're just like, from a storytelling perspective, you can't just not say what happens to a main character like that. Like, you have to give some kind of closure. Even it would be easy in the theatrical version just to have like a passing line from Aragorn or Gandalf or somebody be like, oh, and then you know how Saruman's dead, or like something like that, just so there would be some kind of closure. That is kind of
sort of what they tried to do in the theatrical edition. So what happens in this scene, they walk up to Treebeard, and Treebeard's like, he's in his tower, and then it's so funny the way that they edited theatrical versus extended before Saruman shows up, because in the theatrical edition, Gandalf is basically like, let him stay in his tower. He has no power anymore. He's no danger to us.
Okay, so that's just kind of a write-off.
And that's them being like, he has no power anymore. Treebeard is going to stay here and guard Isengard, I guess, for the rest of his life.
Right.
Although in the book, I was flipping back through some of my notes, and in the book, when they come back to Isengard at the end, you find out basically that Treebeard has been boring Saruman to death. Because he's just...
Which is such a better way to go for him.
And it's just so perfect for the Ents.
Right.
That Treebeard is just talking so slowly.
Yes.
And Saruman is like, I'm gonna kill myself. Anyway, so...
What a way to go.
We get a very different story, though, in Extended Edition, in this added scene, because Gandalf is like, even though he's in his tower, he's still really dangerous.
Right, yeah.
So it's a totally different story.
Yeah.
So watching the scene was really... It was a huge... So I knew that there was this scene in Extended Edition that was cut where I had been spoiled and read stuff about, like, Saruman's death and Saruman's demise. So I knew that there was some scene that was cut where Saruman got his comeuppance in some capacity.
Have you seen the Trollolo video?
No.
Oh, I'll show you that later.
I'll have to watch that later. So... but like, even still, when like Saruman like is like, hello, I'm like, oh my god, Saruman, it's you, because I haven't been used to seeing him in Return of the King. Yes. He doesn't appear at all.
Right.
Also,
he gets impaled.
Also, again, the note that Sir Christopher Lee was furious
with
Peter Jackson.
Crazy.
And it led to, like, a Loki feud.
Oh, what? Oh, I didn't hear this, actually.
Yeah, there was this... Yeah, he, like, has this huge, like, kind of a falling out with Peter Jackson.
Over what?
Over this scene being cut.
Oh.
Because he was really... Because
that makes no sense.
Sir Christopher Lee was not an expert, or not like a scholar, but like essentially, because he had read Lord of the Rings extensively many times in his life, and he actually had met Tolkien.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I think he was the only person in the films who had ever met Tolkien.
Yeah.
He loved Lord of the Rings, and then for him to find out that this huge major plot point for Saruman was totally cut out, he was furious about it. Dang. And like to the point where he almost didn't come back for the Hobbit movie. Like somehow he had to be convinced to come back for the Hobbit.
Right.
And he gave Peter Jackson shade at the Hobbit premiere and was like, so, did you cut anything of my scenes?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And you know, Peter Jackson was like,
Like, I feel like if you made any actor angry with you, Sir Christopher Lee would be, like, the scariest.
Oh my god.
That man
like, his voice
was so
Lord.
Intimidating, yeah. I thought you were going to bring up with that scene... I'm sure you've seen the, like, behind-the-scenes video or whatever where they're talking about the director... whose name I'm blanking on right now. Anyway, he was explaining to Christopher Lee what sound he would make when he got stabbed or something. And Sir Christopher Lee was like, oh no,
I have heard this.
Like, that's not accurate at all. You've never heard a man be stabbed in the back, and I have. And he's like, and then he started talking about some really clandestine parts of World War II.
Oh my god.
I was like, what?
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Okay. We have a new guest. Take his collar off.
Today I'm joined by my friend Bethany and her dog Caspian. Welcome, Caspian. Caspian, can you please tell me how you got into Lord of the Rings? Thank you. Have you seen those TikToks? Have you seen those TikToks of people at like a vet's office and they have those little mini microphones and they'll be like, Fluffy, this is your first visit to us. How are you feeling? And then it's just like, so
anyway,
it's fine.
I'm sorry,
listeners. There might be bone crunching in the background. It's
not, a dog, not
it's not Gimli walking through the paths of the dead. Theoden speaks up with a lot of confidence for a man who barely survived a battle 20 minutes ago.
Right.
And that was only from the pure luck of nothing that he did.
Right.
Anyway, and he's like, come on, Saruman, like, let's face the consequences, let's have peace, blah, 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 blah. And this is a really good scene of seeing Saruman's, like, the way he's able to manipulate people, because I think this chapter, and the scene is called The Voice of Saruman, too.
Right.
His voice, like, is his power, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where, and just, like, seeing the way that he manipulates everyone, and the way that he says, he like, manages to hit a sore spot for every single person there, basically.
Right,
and he tells Gandalf, like, oh, did you tell the Hobbit that you were sending him to his death? And you see Gandalf be really sad about that, because that's something he's sensitive about.
Right.
And then he's like, you really think this ranger is going to be the king? And Aragorn's like, he has a point.
He has a point.
Oh, and then he also says, because he's been looking at the Palantir, he says, something festers in the heart of Middle-earth, something you have failed to see. Is this him referring to Denethor, possibly? Or just, Gondor in general? Because we know in the book, which is something that they cut from the movie, in the book, Denethor also is looking into the Palantir.
Right.
So, I wondered if this was supposed to be, foreshadowing for, you're gonna get to Gondor and find out that it's falling apart because Denethor is crazy.
Super nuts, yeah. Well,
something that you couldn't have foreseen, Gandalf.
Yeah, I think Gandalf already knows a little bit that Denethor's kind of nuts, but not necessarily the extent of it. Yeah. So that could be, I think that is probably what he's hinting at.
Yeah, and so I was wondering if this was supposed to be, foreshadowing about the fall of Gondor and Gondor being not great right now, or if this was just Saruman lying. I don't know.
Well, because there's a thing at the end of Return of the King in the book where he's raising Middle Earth, right? Or am I making that up? Yeah.
No, he does that for the Shire.
Right. Yes.
He takes over. Yeah, he goes and takes over the Shire, which again is cut from the movie entirely. We'll get to that in disc 2.
Cool.
But yeah, so he's just saying things to try and manipulate literally everyone. Gimli is the one to be like, enough of this.
Right. Yeah.
And he goes, Legolas, shoot him. And Legolas is like, okay.
Yeah. He's pulling it out.
He goes to pull out. He goes to pull out his arrow.
Gandalf's like, whoa.
Yeah. And Gandalf has to be like, hang on.
Which,
hang on.
I've got in my notes for later on in disc 2, that Gimli woke up and chose violence.
Literally. But yeah, so Gimli's like, shoot him! And Legolas is like, okay. Then we get a very corny moment of Saruman.
The fireball.
Yeah, shooting a fireball at them with his staff.
It's not the best special effects.
Kind of dumb.
Doesn't follow very well.
Yeah. And then that also could just be because this was not in the final version of the movie, that the special effects for the cut scenes or added scenes weren't as fine-tuned.
That could be.
It could also be because this was 20 years ago.
Something, yeah, exactly. I think that's probably more likely.
And then Gandalf says, you have no staff. No, he says, your staff is broken. Yeah. Kind of with the same authority of a parent to a teenager being like, give me your phone, you're grounded.
And then the phone explodes.
Yeah. The staff breaks. Yeah. Wormtongue shows up and we're like, oh, hey dude, what's up?
Yeah, which every time that happens, it cracks me up a little bit because he shows up right at the end, picturing him just sprinting up this massive spiral of stairs, trying to get there before all the action's over, and he finally shows up huffing and puffing.
Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't go well.
Doesn't go well after that.
And Theoden tries to make a plea to Wormtongue and is like, come on, you used to be a good man, blah, blah, blah. You were a man of Rohan. Again, what's his name? too many characters. Saruman again tries to go for the manipulation and is like, Rohan is nothing but a bunch of farms and rats and thatched roofs.
Which, like, it's interesting watching. Wrong. He's not wrong, but have some patriotism. But yeah, Theoden is talking directly to Grima, and he doesn't ever stop that. He's, like, trying to convince Wormtongue, Grima, whatever his name is, to come down, as opposed to Saruman, who is talking to Theoden.
Yeah.
Like, not addressing him at all. Like, you're not even worthy of my attention in this instance. Which you can see, like, that, I think, as much as what he's saying. But just, like, the lack of care or attention is what pushes Wormtongue over the edge.
So that's actually... Okay, so Wormtongue says... I don't remember exactly what he says, but...
Does he say anything?
He says something where Saruman responds to him and says, "Get down, cur," and then he slaps him.
Yeah.
And apparently this is the turning point for Wormtongue, and I don't get it. I don't get why, like, this one, he says, like, it seems very sudden.
It does, yeah, for him to commit murder. Not just be like, I'm taking my stuff and going home.
What happens in the book for Wormtongue to turn on Saruman is Saruman accuses Wormtongue of cannibalism.
Oh, that's problematic.
That's a lot more major.
That's a lot more than a snack.
You know? So Wormtongue, he pulls out a knife, and I was like, oh my god, because one of my, like, biggest pain points about the scouring of the Shire getting cut is that you lose this closure and wrapping up of Saruman's plotline, because in the scouring of the Shire in the book, it's revealed that Saruman's behind everything, and then Saruman turns on Wormtongue, and then Wormtongue slices his throat.
Slices Saruman's throat?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
So when I see Wormtongue pull out the knife, I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna do it.
Right.
I was like, okay, so they cut the scouring of the Shire, all right, but, like, oh my god, we're gonna see him get his throat cut. No. He runs over, stabs him in the back a couple times. If I didn't have the context that Christopher Lee was like, that's not what a backstabbing sounds like. Yeah. Because when that happens, it almost seems like that doesn't seem real.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not as dramatic.
As
exactly. So he stabs him. Legolas shoots Wormtongue. Saruman falls over. And then...
skewered.
Impaled! And when I say I screamed...
Did you really?
Because that was the absolute last thing I expected.
Right, yeah.
It's very randomly... Peter Jackson woke up that morning and chose violence. Right. He was like, what's the most violent way we can take Saruman out? I know. Have him get stabbed in the back a bunch of times, falls off a tower, and then impaled on this spike.
And then the spike was on a water wheel, and the water wheel goes down into the water. I was like, hot? Dang.
It was very shocking.
Yeah.
And so this scene, and then... the mouth of Sauron of Saruman. No, what? No,
wait, where
Sauron.
is it?
It's like the last scene, basically.
Yeah.
So this scene and the mouth of Sauron scene, which I'll talk about there too.
Yes.
I think they had to cut these because otherwise the movie would have been rated R.
You think?
I think that's what I heard someone say, is that the extended edition of Return of the King is technically rated R.
Wow, I feel like that would not be rated R in the year of our Lord 2021.
Because of all the violence. Yeah. There's just a lot of excessive...
Yeah.
Like, the impalement. Don't get me wrong. It was really cool.
Right.
But it was just, like, so randomly violent that it took me off guard.
Right.
Not it almost took me... It did take me off guard. I was like,
yeah.
Oh my god!
That's funny you say that, and I absolutely believe you because it was, like, 2002. But as I was watching this today, like, the battle scenes... I did have that exact same thought, but the opposite. I was like, if they had made this movie like 5 or 10 years later, there would have been blood everywhere. Like, it would have been so much more gory.
One of my guests that was on for the part of the movie where they launched the heads.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't allowed to watch that when I first saw the movie a couple times.
She said that that part of the movie seems very Game of Thrones to her. And if I hadn't have known that that was originally written in the book.
Yeah.
I also would, like, I agree. Like, that's a very game of, like, it seems like on another plane
right.
of violence.
It almost doesn't seem to fit in with the story.
Yeah. So, and then what's so funny about the theatrical edition versus extended edition for this part of the movie, the wheel turns and Saruman goes underwater or whatever, and then Treebeard kind of looks around and goes, ugh, the filth of Saruman is washing away. And in the theatrical edition, we have, like, you know, oh, Saruman's gonna stay up in his tower, blah, blah, blah. And then you have Treebeard saying, the filth of Saruman is washed away. But if you haven't
that
seen...
line is still in.
Yes, but if you haven't seen extended... You have no idea.
Yeah, they're like, but why? He's still there.
That he's, like, looking at a body that's off camera in that moment.
Slightly uncomfortable.
Oh, my God. So, yeah, so that is a very major scene that was cut. I'm 100% with Sir Christopher Lee that it shouldn't have been cut.
It shouldn't have been cut, no.
It's a very major scene, and it's at this point, in the, you know, it's like, what's 5 more minutes?
Yeah, it's not that long of a scene to have cut.
I'm trying to think.
As opposed to all of the stuff at the end that, did we need?
Yeah. There's a lot of scenes, really, that I'm trying to think. Because usually for the extended edition episodes, I try to pick, like, 1 or 2 scenes that, like, I think it would have made sense if they had kept this in. I think the voice of Saruman should have been kept in.
That's the other one that, yes, absolutely.
So, our next scene is extended, and it is the return to Edoras.
Oh, that's the fun, when they're the drinking game.
Well, hang on. Well, before that,
okay,
they have once again cut literally 5 seconds of Éowyn doing something. At the start of the ceremony, she walks up with a cup and hands it to Theoden, and that's what they cut. They did this to her in Two Towers, where literally, all they cut was some dude was like, what should we do with the food? And she goes, put it in the caves. And that's what they cut. I'm like, really? You can't have 5 seconds more in this movie of a woman
doing something.
Participating. Like, she's participating in this ceremony. Yeah. You know, you see her have an active role in it. That's cool. They're like, no. We gotta cut all that.
I think we're gonna have
an hour-long battle sequence.
Right.
But we gotta cut 5 seconds of Éowyn.
I think we're gonna have some really good Éowyn conversations later on today.
Oh, we're gonna have a lot, don't you worry. So, we cut Éowyn handing Theoden the cup, which kind of adds some context for later on when she gives Aragorn the cup. Yeah. That, like, she's been, I don't know, tasked with bringing this wine or whatever around.
It's like a ceremonial thing.
So, we do have a drinking game between Legolas and Gimli.
I love it. It's so unnecessary, and it's so silly, and it's not. It could
have been very good, but they got the dynamics of, like, book Legolas totally wrong for the movie. Yeah. And it could have been so much so what happens is Legolas apparently has never seen beer or wine in his life.
Even on this trip where he's been traveling with, like, 2 alcoholics.
What do you mean 2?
Aragorn can put them down.
Yeah, I think there's more. That's what I'm saying.
I just meant the trio.
Between like
the hobbits too.
Gandalf is probably more, you know, for the pipe weed than drinking. Right, but like, so he's like, so it's a game. And I love that Éomer isn't on this action. He's the one facilitating it. He's like, all right, whoever can put away as many drinks as possible without throwing up or passing out, you win. Yeah. And Gimli starts downing him immediately. And Legolas, I don't know what Orlando Bloom is doing.
He, like, holds the cup from the bottom.
It looks like he's like I don't know if he's sniffing it or if he's going to take a sip. Yeah. Either way, it looks weird. This is the peak of... I made a joke in the Fellowship episodes that Legolas is as if an alien came to Middle-earth and is trying to blend in and assimilate to learn the culture of Middle-earth. Yes. And so he became an elf. And this is like peak Legolas is actually an alien.
He has no idea what's going on.
He has no clue what's going on.
Yes, fair.
I also don't like this scene because it's very excessive potty humor. And I hate it. It makes me really... I'm like, what? Maybe in 2002 this was hilarious. And it also might be that I'm a 25-year-old adult woman.
Projectile vomits anywhere. He just kind of falls over.
He farts.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, if you have the captions on, at one point, he stands up and farts. And Éomer kind of gives him a look like, what? And then he's like He's like burping and belching the whole time, and he has beer dripping all over his face.
Yeah.
He's very gross looking. Yeah. And he's like maniacally laughing. Meanwhile, Legolas is like putting him back.
Yeah.
And then he goes...
Aemir just keeps handing him beers.
Yeah, and he goes like, wait, I feel something. A tingle in my fingertips. I think I'm being affected. And then...
At which point Gimli
passes out. And Legolas says,
Legolas wins.
Game over.
So I am oddly very prepared for this conversation right now.
Uh-oh.
After watching, I know this is not going to be relevant to you because of what I know about you, but after watching WandaVision last night and talking to somebody about it today...
Hang on 1 second. Spoiler alert for WandaVision.
Yes.
Anyone listening...
Little bit. Tiny bit.
This will be... I don't care. I'm putting it out there anyway because people got mad at me for quote-unquote spoiling Lord of the Rings.
That's fair. Yeah.
As I was reading Lord of the Rings.
I'll try not to spoil anything for it.
Granted, at the time that you're listening to this, it'll be 2 weeks
Yeah, who knows
later,
what episode I'm talking about.
A week and a half later,
right.
So you're probably fine, but just skip ahead.
But the whole concept of WandaVision is it's the like hokey, goofy sitcom type TV show thing, but then in every episode something happens that is just like off enough that you're like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. What's going on there? The episode last night like took that up like 100% of like, oh, this is this silly, goofy thing. Oh, something just happened that like I'm extremely uncomfortable with. Like those two, I was talking to somebody about this morning. Those two Hey, you just spoiled it. Good lord.
Well, I'm going to cut this out.
Okay, fair.
I'm going to cut that part out.
No, that was at the end.
There's a
lot of like, stupid TikTok.
I don't have Disney Plus, so I'm not even watching.
Yeah, and I know you're not like into these shows or anything, but
I would be if it wasn't on Disney Plus, but
I mean, fair. I
like
know that
I
they're
said,
also a capitalist monster.
Capitalism, yeah. I hate Disney.
Their shows are so good. I can't. Those two work so well together of that like goofy humor and then something happening that's just enough off. And you're like, ooh, this kind of like makes me uncomfortable, but in a way that like I want to know more of what's going on. And I think this scene kind of does that, where you've got this like goofy like drinking game thing, and then Merry and Pippin singing. But then there's like that one point when Gandalf kind of looks at Pippin, they make eye contact, and it kind of like gets quiet a little bit. You're like, oh, they're still like in the middle of this like
so
life or death situation.
In the part where Merry and Pippin are singing together, Pippin stops singing at one point and he makes eye contact with Gandalf, and he's just sitting, and you see him, he's still thinking about the Palantir. And then Merry's like, come on, Pippin.
Like, Pippin, hey!
Yeah, and then they keep singing. One more thing about the drinking game.
Yeah.
I think it would have been way funnier, and this would have had to do if they had gotten like book Legolas to movie Legolas more accurate. I think it would have been way funnier if it had been like Legolas hustling Gimli and being like, what's alcohol? I don't know. And then like he's like 10 beers in and he's like, no, I do this back home all the time. Right? Or whatever.
Legolas is actually like has a drinking problem back in
or he's like, he's very aware that he has a very high tolerance, and he takes advantage of that so that he can beat Gimli. I think that would have been funnier.
I think that's kind of what he's doing anyway. He's like, this isn't gonna
but he doesn't. I know, but that's because he's an alien and he doesn't know that alcohol doesn't affect him. Yeah. So that is the return to Edoras scene. The next scene is an added scene called Éowyn's Dream,
which isn't necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's Éowyn, I want her to have more screen time, but what do you actually gain from this scene?
So, we see a little bit more of the sleepover that everyone's doing. We see Aragorn get up and leave, and Pippin is awake. He's still thinking about it, So, Aragorn walks into the main courtyard area, whatever, and this random couch is there.
Yeah, Éowyn is asleep on a wooden bench.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, so, Éowyn is, sort of kind of the princess of Rohan. Right. I don't think in any capacity would the princess just be allowed to fall asleep in the middle of this is where everyone was partying last night. Yeah. Just thinking about the standards of modesty or whatever.
True.
There's no way that anyone would have been like, yeah, we're gonna let this woman sleep here with a bunch of drunk men around.
I mean, they're in another room technically. They're not asleep at her feet or anything like that.
No, when the party was still going on. I don't know, because I'm assuming that the party was still going on and she sat down and fell asleep there.
Maybe.
Otherwise, she would have just gone to bed. Anyway, okay, whatever. I can't.
It's not. I did. This is my pet peeve with TV shows now is when it's a medieval thing and it's dark and you can't freaking see anything. It's a very well-lit room for being the middle of the night.
It is the very
You can see everything.
Yeah. Aragorn goes over and places another log on the fire. And then
covers up her little cold toes.
And then, like, yeah, brings the cloak up to, like, cover her up. And I'm like, not more Aragorn being tender to Éowyn when he has
he has no intention
in like 45 minutes from now, he's going to reject her.
Right. But he's just such a gentleman. He'd do that for anybody, I like to think.
Éowyn wakes up and is like, I had a dream that I was looking out onto an abyss and there was a bright light behind me, but I couldn't turn away or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so is she describing maybe like she's having some kind of vision of something yet to come? And then I was like, oh, maybe it's when she and Faramir are like in the garden area, whatever. And then they see like the ring being destroyed off in the distance and they see like this, because she talks about like a wave coming or whatever. I didn't write down the exact quote of what she says. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, this is like a very specific dream.
Right.
Surely we'll come back to this.
No.
No. All it is, I think, and then Aragorn is not comforting at all. He says, night changes many thoughts. Sleep, Éowyn.
Go back to bed, Éowyn.
And that's it. So, like, he doesn't even comfort her.
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah, night can be weird. All right. Go back to sleep. Like, tucks her hand back up under her chin.
Right.
And then leaves. And that's the scene. I get why it was cut.
Yeah, it's, again,
we don't need it.
I do appreciate more Éowyn scenes and more ladies in Lord of the Rings, but I just don't think it's plot-wise that important.
Yeah.
I don't think it adds to the story very much.
It would have been, again, the way that she was describing the scene, I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something that will be an extended edition.
That connects with this.
That we'll come back to.
Yeah.
The next scene that is extended is the Palantir.
Yeah, what is extended in that scene?
Oh, I wrote down, side note, why are Merry and Pippin not sleeping next to each other? There's like this random man next to... No, not necessarily. Like, they're not next to each other. Right. I think that's it's really weird.
Yeah, fair.
You know, it's a random guy who's next to Pippin.
There's minimal space.
Oh, and then another side note.
Yes.
When they're like, we have to figure out what Sauron's going to do next. Why do they not immediately think like, well... maybe Gondor, because it's literally right next to Mordor.
Quite large.
Maybe Minas Tirith.
Isn't that where Aragorn's supposed to be king of?
Like maybe he's gonna attack the next, like the capital.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Potentially. Good thoughts.
Oh, okay. So, what's extended about this scene actually has nothing to do with the Palantir.
Of course.
It's at the end of the scene when Pippin and Gandalf go off to Minas Tirith.
Right.
And Merry runs up to the little fort to watch them go off.
That's all the same scene. Okay, I figured that part was extended.
Yeah. So
he's talking to Aragorn.
Yeah, he's talking to Aragorn and he's saying like, Pippin's always run after me and we've always gotten into trouble with each other, but I've always been there to get him out of trouble and now I'm not going to be there and now I'm all alone. All of my friends are gone. Frodo, Sam, Pippin, they're all gone.
Yeah.
And Aragorn's like, it's okay, he's a hobbit and I know they're very hardy people. And he says like, foolhardy maybe.
Yeah. But he says it so like almost proudly. Like, oh.
So these are the notes that I wrote, and these are all in caps.
Okay,
I should add. Remember what I said earlier about how, like, later on in the notes-taking process, I was like, okay, I need to be more, like, frugal. I don't know, is that the word?
Yeah.
With, like, my note space. That had not happened yet at this point in the note-taking process.
Perfect.
Not them making the scene more heartbreaking. Not them setting up a parallel that Merry has always looked after Pippin for when Pippin finds Merry on the battlefield.
Yes!
Yeah, so for Merry being like, I've always looked after Pippin, I've always gotten him out of trouble. And then later on when Merry's like, I'll look after you when Pippin whatever.
Yes.
There's too many characters. And then I just wrote, not Merry being alone.
I love... That is like one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, is at the end when Pippin finds Merry on the battlefield and is like looking after him and everything. It's just, it's so good. And it's so like, it just shows their bond and their relationship and their character very well. And I do like, this is kind of a turning point for both of them. I feel like it really especially pushes Merry to the point where he says multiple times to like Éowyn and Theoden and them, like, I want to fight. Like all of my friends are doing something. They're all helping. Like I would be ashamed not to. Which perhaps he hasn't really shown any of that inclination up until this point. It's kind of only now that he's separated from Pippin And he is probably feeling a little lost and alone. Like, I gotta do something. They're all helping. I wanna help too.
What's fun is that in the book, when Merry first has this feeling of like, I'm alone, like Pippin's not with me anymore, it's like, and then he remembered he was hungry. And he went searching for food.
Right.
The next extended scene is Minas Tirith. When they do the fellowship, when they do the flashback to fellowship, I was like, oh my god, that was so long ago.
Right.
And what's extended in this scene...
Hold on, I have in my notes for this, Minas Tirith, is all the extended just wide shots of the city with epic music?
No.
Okay, good.
That's all in theatrical.
Okay, good, good.
What's extended in this scene is when Denethor is like, your first act of service is to tell me, like... How could it be that, like, you're a child and you're here and my son is not?
Yeah.
And he says something to the extent of, like, Boromir was like a mighty man, whatever. And Pippin says, the mightiest man may be pierced by one arrow and Boromir was pierced by many. And I'm like, you did not have to be that blunt.
I mean, he asked.
He did ask, but I'm like, okay, there might have been a better way to phrase that.
I mean, he's kind of trying to say it as like a compliment, like, he was stronger than the strongest man, like, this is not all it took, but like, it took a lot to bring him down.
He got absolutely annihilated, bro. You should have been there.
He died in so much pain.
It was not a swift death.
Oh my gosh.
He suffered a lot. That also prompts Gandalf even more so to be like, get up.
Yeah.
Because in the extended or in theatrical edition, Pippin kneels and is like, I offer you my service. And then Gandalf is like, oh my god, get up. I told you to not say anything.
Right. One rule before we came in this room.
And you broke it.
Shut your damn mouth. Here we are.
The next scene is added, and it is called The Decline of Gondor. And it's very clear to me that they're like, let's have a little history lesson.
Right.
I should have gone back and checked, but I didn't. But the writing for this scene feels very much like they pulled a lot of it directly from the book, which is cool. I always appreciate that. Gandalf says, like, he would use his grief as a cloak. Minas Tirith has stood for thousands of years, and at the whim of a madman, it would fall. Then they set up the white tree and say that, like, it blooms for hope, and when the king is here.
King is returned. Yeah.
But there hasn't been a king here in thousands of years, so it's dying. Yeah. Sad.
Which, that's another great parallel with later on, which I noticed watching it this morning. After Faramir's come back and Denethor's, like, on his way to kill both of them, you hear a voiceover of him saying, like, you know, the line has ended, there's no hope left, the line of kings or something like that. Okay, I won't say it yet.
Because that's extended, actually.
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
I, like, either forgot that happened or didn't notice it the first time, because I wrote down, why would you set up all this stuff about the tree if you're just, like, not ever gonna address it later on?
Yeah.
Which they still don't really, because there's this whole side quest, one of many side quests at the end of Return of the King, where Gandalf and Aragorn are like, we're gonna go climb a mountain and look for a tree. But you
do we really need that in the movie?
We don't need that. No, we don't need that in the movie. But basically, just talking about how this tree represents hope and it's dying.
And now, 20 years later, every spring, I still think of that when I see flowers blooming on trees. Because I'm a nerd and I also hate winter.
Nerd. This was definitely a line from the book. Kings made tombs more splendid than houses of the living and counted the old names of their descent. Yeah, I wrote down decent, but that's fine. And counted the old names of their descent dearer than the names of their sons. And there's this, like, huge dramatic tension about a storm coming from Mordor.
Right, yeah.
And
it's like they blot out the sun.
So much dramatic tension. And then Pippin's like, all right, cool, Minas Tirith. I'm so glad I got to see it. Where to next? And Gandalf is like, oh, no. We got to stay here. Because there's nowhere else for us to go. We got to fight.
I think, is it in this part? Yeah, when Faramir and his troops are, like, coming back from whatever the city is that was falling, Osgiliath, and they're being chased by the flying ring wraiths. And Gandalf, like, rides out into the field with his staff aloft to light the way and, like, scare them off or whatever. I was watching that. I was like, he brought Pippin Why did she bring Pippin?
I know. I realized it like much later on that the only reason Pippin is there with him in that scene is for afterwards, for when he turns around and Faramir sees Pippin, and then Gandalf is like, "That's not the first halfling you've seen, is it?"
Right. Okay.
And then he tells him about Frodo. It could have just been, they could have just had like Pippin come up and be like, "Gandalf," like, and then Faramir's like, "What?"
Yeah.
But it was just easier for them to have Pippin be there anyway.
Right.
But
it kind of felt like.
No, it's very random.
The Mandalorian with Baby Yoda.
And that's like, what I thought.
Pocket.
I thought there was going to be an extended scene that explained why Gandalf brings Pippin out to the battlefield. Nope. That does not happen.
Just can't leave. Couldn't find a sitter, you know.
The next scene is also, the next scene is added, and it is the Crossroads of the Fallen King. This is a very random / useless chapter in the book. Random / useless that I had a friend of the network, Becca Eddowes, on. Becca has never in her life read Lord of the Rings, or watched it, but she was like, I want to come on for an episode. So I asked, what would be a good chapter to have someone on who has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings?
Okay.
And I was told this chapter, because nothing happens in it.
Fair. It's just pretty,
poetic. Basically all that happens, I think, because this chapter, we're still in, for Frodo and Sam's story, this is still Two Towers content.
Ah, right. Up until Shelob, right?
This part in Two Towers happens after Faramir lets them go and doesn't take them to Osgiliath, whatever.
Right.
And all that happens in the chapter is they're walking towards Mordor. They're walking towards Mordor. Frodo and Sam keep saying oh, I'll keep watch, and then they fall asleep. Gollum sneaks off and then comes back and they're like, where'd you go? And he's like, I don't know. And then they come across this creepy statue, which they're walking through Mordor. And Frodo is like, time to be ominous. I don't think I'm going to come back alive. And Sam's like, that's not true. We're going there and back again.
Is that the name of the book?
And I was like, oh my God. And that was it was also very exciting for me, given that I'm going to be starting The Hobbit very soon. So I was like, oh my God. And then he says, just like Mr. Bilbo. And I'm like, oh, you meant to do that.
Yeah.
He did that on purpose.
He's dropping names.
I was like, he did that on purpose. I thought that was just the writers being cutesy.
Nope.
I mean, it was, but
Sam is a Hobbit stan.
Yeah. They come across this statue, and Frodo or Sam is like, oh, right, this land used to be part of Gondor. And it's this statue that has a demonic head on it.
Right.
I don't even know how to describe it.
Aren't these separate in the movie? Because in this scene, it's just a statue of a king, a normal one that's kind of fallen over and has flowers on it. But isn't there another scene where it's something with a metal casing around the head?
No, this is the scene. This is the scene.
No, but it's not. It's just a regular...
No, this is the scene.
I'm pretty sure...
We can pop the... So they come across
the disc?
No, they come across this statue, and it's of a king sitting in a chair, and on top, instead of the normal head, is a demonic-looking head.
Yes.
And then they look, and on the ground next to it is the, decapitated head of the king, and he has a flower crown on it.
You're correct.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
We can pop the DVD in if you don't believe me.
I thought I was interpreting it for some reason they were the same, but no, there are two separate heads. Yes, okay.
A stream of sunlight comes in and shines on the decapitated head, and the flowers.
Sam's look, it's pretty.
It's oh, look, the king has a crown again. And it's foreshadowing, perhaps. Also, I don't know if this was if they intentionally did this or whatever, but given that we set up earlier that the tree of Gondor, when it blooms with the flowers, is hope and the return of the king, and then we have the scene where we see the flower crown, and Sam is saying the king is crowned again.
Yeah.
Or the king has a crown again.
Connected with what's going to happen later. Yeah. I think it's also just... I've always interpreted it Sam is he's trying really hard to
he's just
Frodo
trying to be
from
super
falling
optimistic.
into depression. Yeah. Because he does the same thing at the end when Frodo's losing his mind, and he's remember, think of what the Shire is right now.
He's thanks for reminding me, Sam. I don't remember any of that.
But Sam's just trying to help.
And I think that's all that happens. Yeah,
that's it.
Stream of light comes in, and they're oh, it's pretty here. And then it's almost
and then it gets dark again, and
it's almost right as Frodo turns around that it gets dark again. I'm oh, poor Frodo.
I know.
He can't catch a break. The next scene is extended, and it is the deep breath before the plunge. Really, all that's extended about this scene, and I don't know, I think they just cut it because it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Is all of, like, Gandalf smoking and coughing.
Oh, that's very...
It's not in the... It's just... Gandalf is smoking, and he keeps, like, coughing and choking. And I'm like, either they cut this because they're like, we got too many drugs in here.
Right.
We gotta get it down to a PG-13.
Gandalf's got the black lung.
However, in the extended edition of this scene... In the theatrical edition, Gandalf says, like, guard of the Citadel, when he's, like, listening to Pippin being like, were they serious about me?
Do they actually expect me to fight?
And it's much more of, like, a passing comment in the theatrical edition, the way that it's edited. But in the extended edition, it's much more of a focus. So that later on in the battle, when Pippin kills the orc... and Gandalf goes like, guard of the Citadel indeed.
Right, like, it's you did good, bud.
Yeah. Again, there are a lot more... the extended edition was really about, like, we're gonna set up a bunch of parallels.
Yep.
And then the theatrical edition, they're like, never mind, we don't have time for that.
You just get what you get.
We don't have time to do that anymore.
Yeah.
There's one line that is included in an extended edition in this scene, and it's... Pippin saying, there are no more stars. Is it time? And Gandalf goes, yes, it's time. Or whatever. And that was cut. Whatever. Yeah. Next scene. Sam's warning. This is added. This is...
Really doesn't feel necessary to me either.
It's mostly just kind of setting up more, like giving Gollum more of a motivation to get rid of Sam first and then bring Frodo to Shelob.
Yeah, because you see him make that face after Sam, like, starts going up the stairs and Gollum's kind of sitting there behind him, looking extremely evil and creepy. Like,
I need to do something about that.
It was one of those where, like, you know, the high school nerd, like, stands up to the bully and, like, feels all proud of himself. And you're like, oh, he's going to get his butt handed to him in 20 minutes.
And Sam warns Gollum and is like, look, if you hurt my boyfriend, I will kill you.
Right.
And that's what happens.
That's it.
Yep. Next scene, Osgiliath invaded, extended.
Which we just get more violence.
No, actually.
Oh, wait, yeah, that's right. That's when he's talking to the guy, right?
Yeah. I will, of course, always take more Faramir.
Always.
I understand why it was cut, though, because you need... They're like, we gotta cut down anything we can get.
Right, yeah.
So what we see is that Faramir and random dude with gray hair.
Yeah. Old Captain Guard.
Yeah,
man,
whatever. Are talking, and they're talking about, like, Sauron, whatever, is being quiet from the north. And this is when you realize, oh, they're looking in the totally wrong direction. And they're not expecting the attack to come from where it comes from. So this makes a lot more sense because in the theatrical edition, we see and it's something that I made fun of because you see the orcs trying to be all stealthy and they're like, shh. Right. But then you see everyone preparing in Osgiliath. They're waiting for the attacks. Like they're already, so I'm like, why are they being stealthy if Osgiliath knows that they're coming?
Right.
So here you see they had no idea that they were coming.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Yes.
And it also makes a lot more sense for why Denethor would be pissed off because he's like, Faramir made a mistake.
Yeah.
He might not have gone into the details of like, oh, well, we thought they were coming from the south and they came from the north or whatever direction it was.
Right.
Yeah, it just kind of like sets up a lot more of like the strategy of battles. And then I wrote down in all caps, my boy. I'm assuming that was in reference to Faramir. I just don't know specifically what.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Just being mistreated, as always.
Next scene is Theoden's decision extended.
Terrible decision, really.
Yeah. And for a second, I thought, because when the pause between Gondor calls for aid and Rohan will answer is so long.
It's so long.
I was kind of expecting just as a joke that like the extended part of this scene is just... It's even a longer pause. It's just like 5 minutes later.
It just keeps cutting back and forth of Aragorn like breathing heavily and Theoden thinking.
What's extended in this scene is at the kind of like towards the end when they're getting ready to go off. Mary is like, I want to offer up my services.
Right, yeah.
And again, the parallels because not too long ago we had Pippin offering up his service to Denethor and then Also, like, the contrast, too, of Théoden very happily accepts Merry's help.
Yeah, but it's shallowly when it comes down to it. Yeah. He's like, oh, I know I said that, but yeah, no, you're not coming.
You're not coming. He's at least, like, welcomed the idea, whatever. And then Denethor is like, can you tell me why my son died?
I mean, Denethor welcomes it, but saltily.
Yeah. Again, just seeing the character growth of Pippin and Merry offering, stepping up and taking charge more.
And really being put in these situations accidentally for the most part, but like still rising
Which
to
is,
the
again,
occasion.
just so funny to me that in the movie, the only reason they get involved is because they were running away from Farmer Maggot.
Right, they didn't mean to, but here we are. But they rise to the occasion. They still get it done.
We also have Gimli and Legolas talking, and Gimli says, like, oh, we would have the mightiest dwarves fighting on our side, whatever. Yeah. And Legolas says, I fear your kinsmen, whatever, are fighting their own war. I can't...
Which you really think about.
I can't remember if we get this explanation in the book. If I remember correctly, this is actually the explanation we get for the elves, and why the elves aren't really participating is because they're fighting their own battle on their fronts, and that's why they're not there. So I can't really remember exactly.
Because I always assumed mostly from the movie that the elves are just leaving. They're just piecing out.
So I think they made this explanation for the dwarves in the movies because for the elves in the movies, they're like, nah, you guys have fun.
Bye.
We're piecing out. Also, I just kind of assumed that the reason the dwarves weren't... I know not all of them were in Moria, but I kind of just assumed...
living dwarves, yes.
I kind of just assumed that, like, the reason they weren't partaking in this war is because, like, they're almost extinct at this point.
Well, the only dwarf you see in the whole Lord of the Rings film saga is Gimli.
Gimli, and then, like, a couple other dwarves at the Council of Elrond, and then that's it. Yeah.
There's 3 of them. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then one more thing in this scene is we have this little shot of Pippin trying to get his pony to go.
Oh yeah,
and it won't go. I mean, Merry. Yeah, I wrote down Pippin.
You're good. Yeah, he's like Merry. He's so excited to be like going with the army, and
he can't get the horse going.
To go, yeah.
The next scene is the fall of Osgiliath, and it's extended.
Is that the one with the dinner scene and the singing and the? Dang it!
That's called the Sacrifice of Faramir. That's much later. The fall is when they're running away from Osgiliath.
Right.
Literally, the only thing that was extended about this scene is when Faramir says, like, I saw them not 2 days ago, whatever.
That's it.
What was cut is the line of Gandalf saying, "Tell me all you know."
That's it.
That's all that's extended about this scene.
Okay, moving on.
Like, I think we could have kept that 1 second in.
Can you imagine being, like, the editor on this staff, and they're like, okay, we gotta get this down to, like, exactly 2 hours and 26 minutes or something.
Do you want to hop up here?
I've done that.
In my lap? Come on.
There you go. This is a good boy. Oh, the kisses.
Okay. So, I can't imagine.
Literally take out, like, a second here, a second there.
And, like, that's what happens. I mean, like, I get it. Are you trying to... You're gonna fall.
All done.
I was like, are you trying to leave? I don't want you to fall. But... Okay, sorry, next scene.
The wizard's pupil.
This is a new scene. This is added.
So many sad Faramir eyes.
The wizard's pupil.
It's a whole extra scene of just sad Faramir eyes.
I wrote down, well, time for internal screaming. Also some external screaming. I love getting to see Faramir standing up for himself, really. And being like, no, these are all the reasons you're wrong and why you're dumb. It's amazing growth for movie Faramir.
It is.
Growth
it
that
should not have happened, but
growth that book Faramir does not need because he was already this way.
Yep. At least they gave him something in the movie.
Yeah, whatever. Denethor finds out everything that happened basically in Two Towers with him, where so I had these 2 hobbits and they kind of had the one ring and I let them go. He's like, we could have had the ring, we would have locked it somewhere and not used it except for the most desperate of hours, whatever. And Faramir says, I would not use the ring, not if Minas Tirith we're following and I alone could save her. And this, oh, that's right. Okay, this was when, like, I wrote down Faramir should have gone instead of Boromir, but whatever.
Right?
Like, what domino effect would have happened? I'm sure there's fan fiction about it, but
I'm sure.
What domino effect would have happened if Faramir, because you see in the Two Towers scene where Faramir's like, I'll go. If Boromir doesn't want to go, I'll go.
Yeah.
What would it, because Faramir obviously can be, he sees...
Well, but if we're looking at movie Faramir, he was tempted by the ring.
He was,
so
but he also learned, like, he realized his mistakes. I don't know, like, I think he would have...
I mean, Boromir technically learned from his mistakes. It was like, as soon as Frodo was gone, he was like, oh, shoot, I did a bad thing.
I don't think it would have gone... I don't think with Faramir it would have gone as far as it did.
Yeah, no,
And I think also, had he been in the presence of the Fellowship versus the presence of, like, all these men of Gondor who are looking to him as a leader.
Right,
you know?
true. And already made that
been
oath
different.
of, like, I'm gonna protect Frodo no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think he would have... I think it would have gone a lot more smoothly with Faramir.
Probably, but
then, obviously, the events of the book wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
we wouldn't be where we are.
What up? It's Mary Clay from the future. I think what I was trying to say here, but that I have since now, like, found the words to put together, is that, yes, Faramir would have gone to Rivendell with the instructions from his father to get the ring and bring it back to him, but I think once he had been at the Council of Elrond and heard Elrond be like, no, this ring is evil, it has to be destroyed, I think he would have been like, yeah, you're totally right, let's go do that, whereas Boromir was like, I don't know about that, I think I know more than you. Okay, I don't know. I just needed to say that, of course. I always have things to say about Faramir. Anyway.
But the flip side of that coin is if Boromir had stayed at home with Theoden, would they have just amplified, or with Denethor, would they have just amplified each other's crazy?
It just would have been way worse. They come back to
city is in flames.
On fire. Yeah, and Denethor says, like, oh, look at you. He says, like, trying to act all lordly and gracious. And I'm like, shut up. Faramir already is lordly and gracious.
Right? We already know this.
I think a lot of this scene came from the book. Again, I didn't go back and check, but it's fine.
That's okay.
I think a lot of this dialogue was from the book when we first see Denethor and Faramir interacting with each other. I think it's either, like, chapter 2 or 3 in Return of the King.
Yeah.
Then he says, Faramir says Boromir would not have brought the ring, and I wrote down, Faramir, I love you, but that's just not true.
That's just not true.
And then he continues, he would have kept it for his own, and I was like, oh,
there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So I just this just great scene of Faramir being like, bro, you are so blind to reality.
Yes.
Boromir, he wouldn't have given you the ring because he would have been, because I think he also says, like, he would have returned with the ring and you wouldn't recognize your own son.
Mm-hmm.
And then Denethor stands up, and I thought, I was ready for a fight. I thought Denethor was going to hit Faramir, and then I thought Faramir was going to hit him back. And, like, I was like, I mean, if Faramir hit him,
Faramir wouldn't hit him back. He would just get the saddest eyes.
I know. But, like, I was ready for a throwdown, you know?
Yeah, and what you got was so much worse.
What we got was... So then Denethor, like, falls down, whatever. And this is where you're like, oh, I think he's crazy.
Yeah, this is the first moment when you're like, oh, he's not just a dick. He's actually crazy.
Like, he's not like, oh, he's not just sad that his son died.
Yeah.
Or a bad leader. Yeah. He's all of those things and more.
Yes.
He looks up and he says, and you see his face change, and he's like, my son. And at first I was like, oh no, it's going to cut back and he's going to see, like, instead of Faramir's face, it's Boromir's face. And then I kind of started cringing, preparing myself, being like, oh no, what kind of weird, like,
face change.
Transformation am I about to watch?
Right.
It shows Faramir, and then over his shoulder is Boromir in, like, a shampoo commercial. Like, twirling around in slow motion and smiling.
He's like, hey! Yeah.
It's a little corny for my taste.
That's fair.
I would have preferred it, or I think it would have been more effective if they had just had, like, Boromir was just, like, standing in the background. Yeah. Or was just standing next to Faramir.
Right, not, like,
rather than him, like
that.
Yeah.
That's fair. But that scene, too, like, a lot of the emotional punch from that, especially when, like you said, Theoden sits up. And
you mean Denethor?
I'm so sorry, Denethor.
Like, Bethany, I've never once on this podcast mixed up two characters.
They're both white men and they both lead countries.
They're both terrible leaders.
Yeah. When he says, my son, and he looks all happy, and it pans over to Faramir, Faramir does not look happy. He is also confused. And you're like... What's happening? This hurts so much, because he's not even like, oh, Dad. He's like, what's wrong? Something's wrong.
Yeah. I wrote down, I'm uncomfy.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot to mention, when Denethor first falls down, Faramir, like, steps forward to help him. And I'm like,
he's so pure.
Faramir, like, even when he's being yelled at by his father, he's still like, oh my god, like, are you hurt? Like, what's wrong?
Okay?
Yeah. Also, I think, like, it's, and then, so then the hallucination Boromir, like, fades away, and then Denethor's face changes, and he's like, leave me.
Yeah.
More sad Faramir eyes. Kind of, I don't know if this was my reading of it or if it actually was, but it's also just like probably a sad moment for Faramir because he probably maybe had a bit of hope when Denethor just gets really happy and he's like, my son, where he's like, oh, he's happy to see me, and then he's like, oh wait, no, no, he's crazy and he
it's
doesn't
also
love
like
me.
You know that Denethor is seeing Boromir.
He doesn't know that.
But Denethor never says anything about Boromir. You just know Faramir's got to make that connection himself. You're like, oh.
Yeah. And, like, even still at this point, Faramir, it's like, I mean, I know he's crazy and mean, but I'm sure he still loves me.
Right.
Nope.
And we are going to leave it on that kind of downer note with Faramir's sad eyes. That's right, my coverage of the Lord of the Rings movies has as many endings as Return of the King. But next week is the actual end of Return of the King and movie coverage. And then on March 2nd, I believe, yes, we start The Hobbit. So pack your bags, we're going on an adventure. That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WBNE. You can learn more about the network by going to WBNE.org. And this week I'm excited to announce that our third show joining the network is Curly Critics, which you will hear more about right now.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Jade.
And we're the Curly Critics. We talk books, movies, and TV shows, and whatever else we want to talk about.
Don't forget musicals.
We're just two childhood best friends who got bored during the pandemic and decided to create a podcast.
Join us as we talk Star Wars, our high school English teacher, our collective childhoods, and of course, pineapples.
You know that's right.
Listen every other Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to have a magical day.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brannon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. As you heard at the beginning of the episode, you can now get merch for That's What I'm Talking About. Go to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod or follow the link in the episode description to get stickers or apparel to show your support for That's What I'm Talking About. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at talkingaboutpod, and you can also join our Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter at MCWatsUp and Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod to explore the different tiers and perks. You can become a sponsor like Clark. Clark, thank you for your long time support of the podcast. I appreciate it so much. And I will end this episode with an update. I know you guys have all been sitting on the edge of your seat wondering if I got that specific edition of The Hobbit that I was talking about with Bethany at the start of the episode. I am so happy to share with you that yes, I do now have the edition of The Hobbit that I want without Now a Major Motion Picture on the front. It was an unexpected journey, actually, to say the least. I did contact some local bookstores. They said they did not have it, but they were all like, hey, we can order it for you. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Even if you find it online and it doesn't say Now a Major Motion Picture on the front, there's a good chance it will arrive and it will still say Now a Major Motion Picture on the front. Then, luckily, I found out through people sending me pictures of their copies that if it says worldwide bestseller on the bottom, it doesn't have Now a Major Motion Picture on the front. So I found that copy. It was on Amazon. I know we were all like, capitalism at the beginning, but I had a gift card, so don't come for me. Ordered that. UPS lost it. This all happened in a town 30 minutes away from me, by the way. I could have just driven to the town, knocked down the Amazon warehouse door, and been like, give me my package. They sent it to the wrong UPS facility, where it was then given the wrong tracking label. So that was a whole hot mess. Long story short, it did arrive, and I'm just so happy. So I will end it with that victorious update. I have prevailed, and I now have a book for the aesthetic, and that's what I'm talking about.